Hello and welcome to a revision session looking at whether Stresemann was the main reason for the Golden Age that Weimar experienced in the period 1924 to 28. For the purposes of this revision video, what we'll be arguing is that yes, Stresemann was the cause of there being a Golden Age in Weimar in a huge part, although not culturally, mainly just politically and in terms of foreign policy and the economy, not culturally. So our best evidence that Stresemann was the cause of there being a golden age in the Weimar Republic is certainly foreign policy. So let's have a quick look at foreign policy. So we've got the policy of fulfilment, a key reason why the Weimar Republic was able to deal with reparations. They were able to rebuild their relationship with countries like the USA, who always felt that the Treaty of Versailles had been a little bit too harsh anyway. They were offered around 8 million in loans in order to be able to pay reparations off, which built up that golden age where they stopped hyperinflation. He's also able to remove foreign powers and allies from the Ruhr and the Rhineland as a result of those loans from the US, meaning that they were able to restart paying reparations. He improved alliances with France, with Belgium, and with Czechoslovakia and Poland by signing the Locarno Pact and the Kellogg-Briand Pact, as well with 62 other countries where they agreed that they're not going to solve disputes by wars. We've mentioned the Dawes Plan as well, and Stresemann managed, by following this policy of fulfilment, outwardly being seen to be more trustable and to be complying with the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. He's able to get Germany into the League of Nations by September 1926. So it's really, really clear that in terms of foreign policy, Stresemann is clearly the reason that Weimar was experiencing a so-called golden age in the years 1924 to 28. We do have to acknowledge that Stresemann was very reliant on the support of the USA. It wasn't just him that enabled all these things to happen. Without the support of the USA, Weimar wouldn't have been able to really finish the policy of fulfilment, because they wouldn't have been able to get allies out of the Ruhr or rebuild their relationships with France and Belgium if they weren't paying off those reparation costs. However, it was Stresemann that was the one that crafted this alliance with the USA. So you could still argue, despite the limitations of this, Stresemann was a key reason for the success of foreign policy in the Weimar Republic. The next best evidence that we've got that Stresemann was a cause of the Golden Age in the Weimar Republic is probably in terms of politics as well. Stresemann cooperated with a large number of coalition governments, which was obviously a key feature of the Weimar Republic, as of the nature of their elections being not first past post, but being proportional representation. He also was a leading politician in this period over an extended period of time, considering that there were around about 23 cabinets in this time. He featured in most of those. And the coalitions in the Weimar Republic were very moderate whilst he was in charge. Politics was quite smooth running. There were less extreme parties. There was only a shift to the far right after his death in 1929. You could certainly argue that a success of Stresemann that helped to achieve the golden age of the Weimar Republic was that he was able to achieve majority votes, despite the fact that there were a large number of parties in the Reichstag. However, there are limitations to this argument. It's certainly not so much just Stresemann that enables success in this period, because despite Stresemann's willingness to compromise with other parties, only 6 out of 23 cabinets that were formed had a majority supporting the Reichstag. So it wasn't just him who was making reforms. He relied on lots of other parties to support him. And you could also argue that it's not just Stresemann that keeps the extreme parties from rebelling or from sort of street fighting that you saw in the early years of Weimar 1919 to 1923. Another key reason that this is limited is because of Hindenburg being elected as president. After he was elected as president, because he was an army general or an ex-army general, he won over a lot of the right-wing side of the party, and that stopped the need or the feel of the need for rebellions, because they felt that their right-wing views were being more represented by the Weimar Republic than they had been before. So yes, Stresemann was a key reason for the Golden Age, but perhaps he wasn't the only reason for political success in the so-called Golden Age. In terms of the economy, it's also true that Stresemann was a key reason for a Golden Age in the Weimar Republic. For example, Stresemann issued a new currency, the Rentenmark, and that was a key reason why hyperinflation was able to end. He also spent a lot more new taxes on welfare improvements, which improved life for the general public. He was the one that worked with the USA on the Dawes Plan, which also obviously significantly helped to end hyperinflation, and his speeches made people feel more confident about the economy. There were limitations of what he achieved, certainly. Many smaller businesses didn't really gain anything from the new currency because they'd lost most of their wealth and savings during hyperinflation. And the extent of economic recovery was somewhat limited. Growth rates weren't anywhere near as steady as they had been before the Weimar Republic, and there was less money being invested in machinery and big businesses than there had been before. However, there was significant improvement in the economy, and therefore, although it wasn't perfect, I would argue that Stresemann was a key reason that there was some sort of a golden age, as much as it could be argued, in the Weimar Republic in terms of the economy. The last area of Weimar Germany that we would need to consider if we're looking at its so-called Golden Age would be cultural change. Although it's possible to argue that partly cultural change happens as a result of Stresemann's new relationship with the USA, meaning that there's more sort of capital, extra money left over that people could spend on culture, and Stresemann's economic reforms sort of lead the way in that way. Bringing over jazz music from the USA and the extra money meaning people would invest in perhaps art or going to the theatre or film industry in a way that they hadn't before. I'd argue that really very strongly cultural change isn't really as a result of Stresemann. Experimentation in new fields was more as a result of other key individuals. For example, Expressionism, we had key painters like Kandinsky and Gros. In architecture, there's the Bauhaus movement, which is started by William Gropius in 1919. And sort of other elements of the Weimar Constitution, things like free speech, meaning that it was possible for there to be satire against politicians. All of those things are really what enables cultural change in a very big way in the Weimar Republic. Not so much Stresemann himself. I'd say that's probably a more minor part in it, really. So to reflect on our question that we started with about whether Stresemann was the main reason that there was a golden age in the Weimar Republic in 1924 to 28, I would argue strongly that he probably was the main reason that Weimar experienced a golden age. However, there were other factors which were almost certainly nearly as important. For example, the new relationship with the USA. Without the economic stability that the loans provided Germany or the Weimar Republic, it wouldn't have been possible for there to be a golden age culturally, politically, in terms of foreign policy, because the policy of fulfilment wouldn't have worked out. So I'd say actually almost in equal importance, the USA's relationship with Germany and President Wilson's support also enabled the golden age as well as Stresemann. That's the end of this revision session. Best of luck with your revision.